At Ashton Court. Behind me, the balloons are preparing for the second mass ascent of the day. Who would have thought this was possible after all the rain that we've had this week? The organisers are, of course, delighted. The forecasters are predicting a promising weekend, and something like 500,000 people are expected to watch this free show. Well, this is what the event has become, a very large event indeed. And later in the programme, we'll be inviting you to come flying with us in a balloon, and I'll be examining some of the special shapes on show. That's all later. First to the News West studios in Bristol, and Rachel Hicks and David Passmore for the news stories. At Ashton Court, behind me, several dozen balloons now inflating, and the mass ascent should be happening, well, any time now, that we hope. Now, when these balloons do lift off into the sky, it's a spectacular sight. Well, it's a spectacular sight too when they're going nowhere. These were the scenes at the night glow last night. Well, it's the traditional start to the fiesta. Balloons use their burners to glow in time with music, thrilling the many thousands of spectators. For those in charge of the flames, it was hot work, but well worth the effort. Well, most people describe lifting off in one of those things as like going up in an express lift, and the reason is the pilots want to get out quickly from the huddle of balloons all around here. Well, the first mass ascent was at 6:30 this morning, and we sent our first-time flyer, Scott Ellis, along for the ride.
Daybreak at Ashton Court. And lift-off for the early risers. 150 in all, in minutes, up and away. Bad weather had threatened the event, but today it was near perfect. A gentle breeze and warm enough even for a high-flying Scotsman in a kilt.
Tremendous. I mean, look at that. 25 years and you can never get tired of that. I know I haven't.
Well, this is a tricky bit. We're looking for somewhere to land now. The only trouble is Nails is in the way, and a lot of the fields around the town are still very muddy from the recent rain. But I've been told just to hang on, close my eyes and bend my knees.
Everyone landed safely, many, including us, in a school playing field. A rude awakening for the neighbours.
Very rude awakening, yes. We thought it was the milkman. I thought it was my husband. They're very loud. Nice to have them on the doorstep.
Yeah, they woke me up hours ago, but when they saw the balloons, I was dragged out the house pretty sharp. So.
After dreadful weather earlier in the week, a memorable start for Europe's biggest annual balloon fiesta. And there's a weekend of takeoffs and happy landings to come. Scott Ellis, BBC News West, Bristol.
Thanks, Scott, very much indeed. It's the landings that I hate. Mind you, the pilots tell me that any landing you can walk away from is a good one. Now, one of the things that attracts us to the Bristol Balloon Fiesta every year is the crop of new shapes that we see. Now, to fly them, well, they're like great lumbering beasts, I'm told, and the designs get more and more complicated every year. These are just some of the shapes making their first appearance in the skies above Bristol. They're balloons, but not as we know them. This year's special's the sports car. Then there's the giant Sweetie. And who could miss Douglas, the yellow man perched on a tub of butter? What will they think of next, and how do they fly? Enter the design team at the world's biggest balloon manufacturers, Cameron in Bristol. Dave Boxall says they can do almost anything, if they can get in enough air to deal with the weight.
We have to have something with sufficient volume, and what we always say is that the one thing we couldn't do would be a worm on a push bike, because it's all really thin tubes. A fat bloke on a motorcycle, no problem, but a worm on a push bike is just something that we couldn't approach.
In the case of the sports car, the design team managed to get sufficient air in by attaching a cone to the base. They put in detail like wheel nuts and the exhaust pipe, but the wing mirrors have been left out because they would have drooped. The Cameron team also designed this, the Scotsman, the largest privately owned balloon at the Fiesta. The biggest problem here, where to put the basket.
So we've got this thing hanging down just to take the air up up the Scotsman's
Yeah,
kilt.
and the owner or the Scotsman, presumably they don't mind too much.
Well, certainly the Scotsman hasn't complained.
Pilots say that flying these great balloons can be frustrating. They need good weather, they take hours to prepare and hours to pack up. And in the air, well, they lumber and twist.
The unusual shapes are more restricted by the wind conditions. On a nice evening, perhaps with 10 knots of wind, the conventional balloon will quite happily take off and fly, whereas with a special shape, you're probably restricted to 5, maybe 6 or 7 knots at best.
The giant balloons are often left on the ground while the simpler designs sprint off like sports cars. But it seems, given good weather and skillful design, even pigs can fly. Well, I'm joined now by the private owner of that amazing Scotsman balloon. That's Mr. Muir Moffat. Mr. Moffat, what made you do it? What made you buy a 650-foot balloon?
I'd seen some wonderful shapes and seen the terrific reaction people have to them. They really are just sort of awestruck, and I just thought it'd be nice to be able to do something that would put a smile on so many faces, and that was the original idea. I was, when I was at school in Scotland, I was in a pipe band, and I've always found piping something that's inspired me. And the whole thing was just clearly such an opportunity to have a very evocative shape, and so that's why we did it, for fun, really.
You're a Scotsman, but living
Yes,
in the
I am.
West, so this is a little tiny momentum of hope.
Oh, it's a very big momentum of home, actually. But I suppose you could put it that way. It's quite a lot of nostalgia in it.
Well, it's given a lot of people a lot of fun. Thank you very much indeed. And you can see the Scotsman at some lift-offs over the weekend. But now we catch up on that all-important weather forecast and Tony Tom.
Right, thank you, David. Well, this is about what the BBC could afford for me today, I'm afraid. But it's sweltering heat everywhere. Really a very fine outlook. Today the temperature's up to 29, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, and it looks set fair for tomorrow too. Tonight, for instance, it's a dry night. It's a fairly misty one, quite a lot of fog about, and quite a sticky night too. The temperature is no lower than about 16 at 61 degrees Fahrenheit. And the pressure, 1,017 here in Bristol, rising a little during tomorrow. And then tomorrow, well, for the Balloon Fiesta, starting dry and bright with sunny spells. There may be a bit of mist about at first, but nevertheless, it will be quite a pleasant day. The temperature's up to about 16, 61 degrees Fahrenheit. Rather similar over the weekend too. And with that, I hand you back to David Garmson, who is airborne somewhere, I think.
Tony, thanks very much indeed. Are you very short, or is that a very tall man behind you? Well, that's just about it from the Balloon Fiesta at Ashton Court. The traffic's bad outside, I understand, but who cares? I think I'll go home by balloon. For now, from all of us here, goodbye.
In life,